And this is a good transition to welcome our in-studio guest. That is Councilmember Jack Evans from the district. He represents Ward 2, and he is a candidate for D.C. Mayor. Thank you very much, Councilmember Evans, for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure. And your new location, too.
It's pretty
I
beautiful.
thought maybe you moved, so I couldn't find you, But
You were listening to some of that Virginia. When you've talked about the district, you've often made fun of Maryland and Virginia for various tax reasons.
Always.
But what are your thoughts about Governor McDonnell going from a well-respected governor to in the docket for taking money?
Well, I mean, Governor McDonald is a astute politician, and so you just have to sit and wonder, what was he thinking? I mean, to have, you go back to the beginning, to have your daughter's wedding reception paid for by a political donor. I mean, no one in the district would even consider that. And the Rolex watch and the Ferrari, and albeit it was, I guess, legal in Virginia, but the perception. And, I think what happens with many politicians, it's one incident after another. And it's the famous adage, why did you do it? Well, I didn't think anyone would notice. And how he got himself in trouble, my recollection, I haven't followed this that carefully, is they didn't pay the cook, or they fired the cook, and then the cook, reported, and then it's like the
string
on the,
exactly.
and you pull it, and the whole
and
thing
Suleiman
falls
Brown
off.
was our string in the District
That's
of Columbia
right.
for the scandal. And you're running against Mayor Gray.
Yeah.
The prosecution of his campaign of 2010, the mayor won't talk about 2010. He only wants to talk about what he's done in the past. As long as you talk about his time as mayor, he doesn't want to talk about the past when it comes to his getting elected. What are your thoughts about that as a candidate for mayor? I know Tommy Wells and other candidates are like banging the drum about the ethics of it. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I've said all along, and I still say, what the mayor owes the public is an explanation from himself as to when did he find out that an illegal campaign was being run on his behalf, and what did he do when he found out? Between June 1st of 2010 and when he took office in January of 2011, and then when this all came out in February, at some point in time in that time frame, the mayor became aware of this. And so he had a responsibility when he became aware of it to disclose it to the Office of Campaign Finance. So when did this happen, and what did he do? And I just saw Mike DeBonis' interview today. I don't know if you've all seen it.
It's an hour. I read it's an hour. He talked for about an hour.
And Mike pressed him hard on the issue, and the mayor, again, was unwilling or unable to answer that question as to when did you find out. And it harkens back to the kind of the Richard Nixon Watergate, is when did Richard Nixon find out? Richard Nixon didn't break into the Watergate Hotel. He didn't even tell those guys to do it. But at some point he found out about it. And when he found out, what did he do? Well, he covered it up. And that was the obstruction of justice problem that he ran into. And so with the mayor, it's just a simple question, is when did you find out? And then what did you do? And I think that's what people really want to know. And unfortunately, they're unwilling to provide that information.
And that's going to be a central theme of your campaign, right? I mean, this is...
Well, no, it's not a central theme of my campaign. I'm running for mayor, not against the current mayor or anybody else. I'm running for mayor because I believe I can do the best job in taking the city from where we are now to a city that provides the prosperity we're enjoying for all the residents of our city. I've been on the council 22 years. I know, Tom, you don't like me to say that because
it seems to me like a long time.
A long time, but have really literally been involved with all the economic development projects, all the progress really that our city has made, particularly since 1999, and have been one of the key players. And I believe that having that experience, knowledge, and leadership it really enables me to be the best mayor going forward, building on the success of Mayor Williams, Mayor Fenty, and Mayor Gray.
A lot of people do, in fact, say that Mayor Gray has done a good job. He would say a lot of it's his own initiative, but that he has continued the building on Mayor Williams and Fenty.
Yeah.
And that a lot of things are working well in the city. But what does that mean for you? How does, for example, you become the mayor, what do you do differently or better than what the mayor did? Do you get a better fire chief? Do you blow up Department of Employment Services, which a lot of people think it's run terribly? Where do you point out differences from what you would be doing if you were mayor that Mayor Gray's not doing now? Because you've gotten some flack for saying he's done a pretty good job.
Yeah, well, and again, he has done a good job. He's built on the success of the prior mayors, and I would build on the success of him and the prior mayors as well.
So why not you then instead of him?
Well, one obvious thing is the mayor is involved in a federal investigation. At some time between now and 4 years from now, something's going to happen, and he'll either have nothing happen, a slap on the wrist, or something even more serious. And you just can't have that cloud hanging over your city as you go forward. And I think that's probably the biggest difference between the mayor and myself.
And then what about
And
public
then
policy?
on public policy, though, I think what you need in a mayor is someone who the whole basis of the revitalization of this city has been our finances. And I know people glaze over when I start to talk about this, but right now with the retirement of Dr. Gandhi, I am the last remaining person who started the Wall Street Renaissance. And myself, Tony Williams, Linda Kropp, and Nat Gandhi went up in '99. I'm the only one left, and that continuity is very important. And so again, in a mayor, you want someone who understands this stuff, and it doesn't have to be explained to them or something they have to learn on the job. But beyond that, it's the expertise I have in economic development. What has not happened, and we're trying to make it happen, is the economic development in parts of the city like Ward 7 and 8 that hasn't happened. And again, how can we be sitting here today, 3 years into the Gray administration, 7 or 8 years past where the economic development started, and have one sit-down restaurant in Ward 8, one sit-down restaurant in Ward 7, no movie theaters east of the river. I just introduced legislation to establish bids in Ward 7 and 8.
Business improvement districts.
Business improvement districts. And what the problem I'm having, it's getting too difficult to really help this city from the Ward 2 council seat. You need to be the mayor. You need to set the agenda. You need to have the opportunity to make your ideas happen as the mayor, not from the Ward 2 council member. It's very hard at times, and you know how the city's set up, to try and do things in other people's wards. There's always this territorial view. So when I start doing things in Ward 7, 8, 5, or whatever it is, that council member sits up and goes, wait a minute, what are you doing over here?
And Muriel Bowser has made a very similar argument from that perspective. I mean, how do you view sort of the other candidates here?
Well, again, I think the thing that distinguishes me is, again, the experience that I bring to the table. The other candidates have talked about doing things, but I'm the only candidate, and I would include the current mayor in this, who has produced tens of thousands of jobs for this city just recently with the Convention Center Hotel. That is a deal that I did put together, and because of it, there will be 600 new jobs for district residents starting in May. And I have created and put together, and there's other people involved, so I don't want this to come across as being just but was a major player in the main projects, the Verizon Center, the Convention Center, the baseball stadium, the O Street Market. I know the mayor takes a lot of credit for that, as he should, but the O Street Market started long before the mayor was the mayor or even chairman of the council. It was a project that I had worked on and brought the financing to, and then he was very successful in helping out after that. And so that's why Vince and I in many ways get tied together. He was chairman of the council and I was vice chair for 4 years and had a very successful run at that. And then as mayor, he and I worked together and had a very successful run at things. And so that's where it's hard to differentiate the success.
Well, the flip side of that is that people say, oh, Jack Evans, he's too close to developers. Jack Evans, he's too close to the economic interests of the city and not enough to the struggling middle class, or there's a growing national debate about income disparity in the country. So if you know how to deal with developers to get projects going in the city, what do you say to the people in the low end, other than there'll be more jobs, but what do you say to the middle class people who are worried about being forced out of the cities?
Well,
and what are the poor people who don't quite have jobs? I mean, is there something the government should be doing in addition to just promoting economic development? Or are you just, as people say, the tool of developers? You've heard it 1,000 times. So address that flip side.
Yeah, let me address both of those issues. First of all, as being a person who supports economic development, developers, and et cetera, remember where we were in 1991. The best analogy I can give you, and on a very serious note, is we were like Detroit. Our center city was abandoned. Our unfunded pension liability was over $10 billion. Our finances were in chaos. And so we had to rebuild the infrastructure. And the way you do that is to create an environment where developers were willing to invest, to partner with them, so to speak. And now we have rebuilt our city. And so for one to take the position you should have always been against developers, we would be Detroit today. And so we are not Detroit today. Now, having said that, Tom, as you know, Ward 2 at one time was a very diverse ward. It's not diverse today because the boundaries keep changing because people keep moving into the ward. But I represent Shaw, Northwest 1, Southwest, and all of those neighborhoods. As we brought development to those neighborhoods, our goal and my theme was always the people who are here during the difficult times get to stay here during the good times. That was the result of the creation of the Housing Production Trust Fund, which has built more affordable housing in the city than any other mechanism that we have had. And I've fought continuously to keep it there, extending rent control for 10 years to make sure that tenants can stay in their buildings, lowering property taxes to make sure that homeowners are not priced out of our city. The senior citizen bill that we just passed on first reading. If you're 75, live in the city 15 years, and earn under $60,000, you don't pay property taxes at all. And so that's what we're looking is to protect individuals as we bring the economic growth into the neighborhood.
So how do you break out, you, Muriel Bowser, Tommy Wells, and even Vincent Orange, a little bit lower in the polling, are all kind of bunched together behind Mayor Gray? Has only 24% of the people for him, 76% either undecided or against him. So that's pretty horrible for an incumbent, but the challengers are all bunched together. How do you break out from Muriel Bowser, Tommy Wells, and Vincent Orange, Andy Shalal, who's brand new to the business,
Right.
has shown up with 5 or 6% in the polling, which is significant for someone who's never been in politics
Right.
before. There's
Right.
a lot of stirring and about opposing the mayor, but no one's breaking out. What do you do to break out?
Well, I believe in it. There's 68 days left before the election, and you're right. Most people are just not focused on the fact that in 68 days we're going to elect the next mayor of the District of Columbia who's going to be there for the next 6 years, for 4 years, and then the years in between. And so what I intend to do is when people start paying attention to this through our outreach, they will begin to understand how important it is to have someone as mayor who brings that leadership, knowledge, and experience that can extend the prosperity this city is enjoying to everyone. And someone at the helm who has done it. And I keep hearkening back to that. It's one thing to promise, I will do this. It's another thing to say, I have done it and can do it again and again.
But there's a liberal move. The city's awash with money. There's going to be another
Yes.
surplus of hundreds of millions of
Right.
dollars. The 1.5 billion's back in the bank. All of those are good things. Council members saying, let's spend some of this money on these various issues. And so maybe being the steward of a safe conservative office, it's not as important now. People want to just spend that money. Are you saying you're the check on a council running wild?
As mayor, I would be the person who makes sure that the money we spent is spent wisely and produces the results that we intend. We spend over $11 billion in this city on 630,000 residents, more per resident than any city, county, or state in America. And because of that, we should have the best of everything. And as mayor, my goal is to make sure that happens, whether it's the schools, education, whether it's on our public safety and the police and fire departments, affordable housing, job creation, all of these things we can do a lot better than we're doing. And as mayor, that's my goal.
You're listening to the Politics Hour on WAMU. I'm Christina Bellantoni, editor-in-chief of Roll Call, sitting in for Kojo Namdi. And you can join our conversation and send us an email to kojo@wamu.org, like Ray did. He's asking Councilmember Evans to please weigh in on what it will take for you to support the DC United Stadium project. Please go into as much detail as possible, just as your fellow council member, Mr. Graham, did last month in an op-ed in The Blade. In particular, how do you view the issue of the future use of the Reeves Center site? Councilmember Evans.
As you know, I'm a big supporter of a new stadium for the soccer team, the DC United. We are waiting the mayor's proposal, but the broad outlines I do support, where the stadium's being constructed and how we go about it. The Reeves Center is going to, as I explained to Alan Liu, the Reeves Center land swap is going to be a controversial approach because you have to evaluate it, how it gets swapped, and all the details. A better way I would have thought was if you're going to use the Reeves Center to put it on the market, sell it outright, get the money, and then use that to purchase the land. It's much clearer. People understand that. And so one thing I'll be looking at is how they structure that. And number two, the idea of equity sharing with the team I think is a terrible idea. Sports teams always lose money. I think they have two sets of books, the ones they really have and then the ones they show the public. So I don't ever believe we would ever get any money out of that. I think what you want is a clear, concise, straightforward deal, like we did on the baseball stadium. Whether you agree with it or not, it was very understandable. This is what we pay, this is the money we need to borrow, and this is how we're going to pay it back. And that's how I would structure the DC United. I would love to get it done as soon as possible. DC United is a great team, And of all the sports soccer franchises, there are only 2 now that don't have a new stadium, and we are one of them.
Critics say that we overpaid for the baseball stadium. What is the status on paying off the bonds for it, and has it hurt the city's ability?
No, it hasn't. See, the way it was structured is we had to build the new stadium ourselves. Otherwise Montreal would not have moved here. People just don't understand that. It was very close to going actually to Virginia. But we had the 3 taxes we put in place: the tax on the utilities, largely federal government, the tax on the businesses, and then the taxes on all the stadium things, the rent and all the things sold at the stadium. So I have said this repeatedly, and I'm absolutely right. If you don't go to the baseball games, you don't pay for the stadium at all. The utility tax is largely on the federal government, the business tax is on businesses, and the other taxes are on people who
I got to ask one last question. For the last, since Tony Williams through to Adrian Fenty and Mayor Gray, you have been supporting bringing the Washington Redskins,
Absolutely.
Washington football team back for it to build its own stadium on city land where RFK is now.
Yes.
What is the status of that, and are you getting pushback? I know some of the people who live on the east part of Capitol Hill are worried that their housing and retail and all the things they want in open space will be pushed out. Can it survive with the people who live up there, and is it still a good idea? And we won't talk about the team's record.
The team's
right now.
record or name, but the concept of bringing the Redskins back to the city is an excellent idea.
It's a billion-dollar business.
Yes, the way the concept would work is you would tear down RFK Stadium and then build a brand new stadium there. The discussion.
The city or the team?
No, the team would have to pay for the stadium, and it would be a dome stadium, so you could hold a Super Bowl as well as other events. And the beauty of that site is you already have 10,000 surface level parking spaces there. You have a metro stop on site and 3 access roads. And if the stadium's about 75,000 seats, what we're talking about, RFK has about 50. And when the Yankees played the Nationals there, that's our recent experience, you could get people in and out of there very easily. And I think the people on Capitol Hill are always concerned about that, rightly so. But remember, the Nationals played 81 games there. We're talking about 8 football games and then other events that would be there, but nowhere near 81
But what
games.
about getting the shopping and the retail that people in the east end of the city there want? Is that going to ever get there? I mean, they had a plan worked out 15 years ago or more, and nothing's happened.
I think you would get it there much faster if the football stadium were located there, because you're looking at Hill East, which is to the south of where the stadium is. And if you
DC
had
General is and all
exactly.
that, then we need a new jail and all kinds of things.
You'd take that all down, and then if you had, say, 75,000 people coming there on a given Sunday, it's like our Verizon Center experience. When they pour out of the Verizon Center, they don't go home. They go to all the restaurants, shops, and bars and everything around there, and you would have that same experience happening if you had a stadium.
There'd be neighborhood grocery stores and other things.
You would produce all of that. See what's happening around the baseball stadium. Contrary to what the naysayers always say, they come in with these stacks of studies how sports stadiums don't help anybody. Go down to the Verizon Center today and tell me that was not a success. Or go down to the baseball stadium. Maybe in other cities it didn't work, but I got to assure you it works here.
And should the team change its name?
It should change its name, but I hate to get involved in tying that to their coming back to the city, and that may very well be a problem. But yes, it should, and I hope someday the National Football League and the owners of the team realize that and come up with a new name for the team.
David Catania is an independent council member. He's the chairman of the Education Committee. He's made it pretty clear he's going to probably run for mayor as an independent in November. He's making education almost 100% of his goal, saying we can't fix all the problems in the city, or most of them, if we don't have a well-educated school system or kids in schools. Schools are really important. Middle schools are people, they come to the elementary schools, they bail if they can at middle school. High schools are kind of a mix. Where does education fit in your own plan, and how do you differ from Catania or the other Tommy
Sure.
Wells, who wants a school for everybody to be able to walk to it?
Yeah, education, as you've heard in my speeches, is first and foremost the most important issue I would have as mayor. And how I differ from my colleagues, Mr. Wells, Catania, and others, is I would not be the school chancellor. I would be the mayor. And sometimes when I listen to them, they sound like the chancellor. When we set the system up the way it is now, the mayor controls the school system. The mayor hires the chancellor. The chancellor then runs the school system with some direction by the mayor. We didn't set it up for the council to become the school board, which is increasingly happening as well. What I would do is, Kaya Henderson, I like her, I would work with her, I would ask her to stay, and hopefully she would. And we would continue the reforms necessary to make this a better school system. There are two areas, though, that I would add to it. And as you know, I'm the father of triplets, 3 kids. My wife passed away when they were 6, so I was very involved in education, albeit they went to private school, I understand that. But they did go to school. And you do learn about kids' education regardless of where they go to school. One thing I would work towards is a goal of getting all of our children in this city in school at an earlier age. If you can get kids in school at 10,
At 3 already?
we're at 4 years old now, and I applaud Mayor Gray, who has really led that. But get them in school earlier, and then the after-school services that are so important to children. Those are 2 areas I would focus on in addition to improving our system.
That's where we're going to have to wrap
Yep.
it today, but we would be remiss if we did not mention Miss Virginia Williams, the mayor, the mother
yes,
of former Mayor
Williams'
Anthony
mother
Williams.
passed away.
She passed away
2 days
yesterday.
ago, yeah.
She was 87.
Yes.
Delightful lady. She was
Fabulous.
she filled a room with her
She was,
enthusiasm. She's the opposite of Tony Williams. He's shy and retiring and reluctant to
know.
speak. And she comes in. She took the room over. She was delightful.
When
and
I
she
ran
was
for
citizen
mayor
role.
in 1998 and Tony Williams was the other candidate, we all felt we were running against Virginia Williams because she was the life of the party at all the debates and everything. So she will be sorely missed in this town.
Big heart, and there'll be
yeah.
some event
Yeah.
soon for a memorial service
Yeah.
to be scheduled.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much to Tom Sherwood, our resident analyst and NBC4 reporter and columnist for the current newspapers, and Councilmember Jack Evans of Ward 2, candidate for D.C. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. I'm Christina Bellantoni, was sitting in for Kojo.
Back on a-